There's a moment many people remember, even if they've never put words to it. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. No one screams. No one storms out. No doors slam. It's quiet. You're standing there, maybe as a child, maybe as a teenager, maybe even as an adult visiting home again. And someone else is being praised. Someone else is being noticed. Someone else's effort is being celebrated. Their name gets said with warmth. Their progress gets highlighted. Their mistakes get softened with understanding. And you realize no one is looking at you. Not because you failed. Not because you didn't try. But because somehow, over time, you became background noise. That moment plants a thought that doesn't leave easily. Maybe I'm just less important. This is the psychological world of the undervalued sibling. And if this feels familiar, it's not because you're weak, dramatic, or too sensitive. It's because your nervous system learned something very early that shaped how you see yourself, how you attach to others, and what you expect you're allowed to receive. Undervaluation doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from something more common and more confusing. Comparison. One child becomes the smart one. Another becomes the responsible one. Another becomes the talented one. Another becomes the difficult one. And someone else quietly becomes the one who will be fine. Parents rarely say this out loud. They don't intend harm. They're often overwhelmed, distracted, stressed. They're trying to manage life. But attention follows urgency. Praise follows visibility. And over time, one sibling receives emotional investment, while another receives assumptions. The assumption that you don't need as much. The assumption that you're strong. The assumption that you'll manage. The assumption that you're okay. But the human brain doesn't thrive on assumptions. It thrives on recognition. When recognition is missing, the brain fills the gap with self-questioning. Because children are meaning-making machines. They don't think, my caregivers are overwhelmed. They think, something about me must not be enough. And that belief doesn't disappear when childhood ends. It matures. It disguises itself. It follows you into adulthood wearing new names. Self-reliance. Low expectations. Emotional independence. Being easy. Being low maintenance. On the outside, the undervalued sibling often looks capable, calm, and composed. Inside, there's a quiet negotiation happening all the time. Don't ask for too much. Don't take up space. Don't need what others need. Don't make it harder. Psychologically, this creates a strange internal split. One part of you becomes hyper-responsible, organized, helpful, emotionally aware. Another part remains emotionally hungry, but unsure if it's allowed to be. So you learn to minimize your needs, not because you don't have them, but because expressing them once didn't change anything. And the brain adapts. There's an important detail people often miss. Undervaluation is not always active rejection. Sometimes it's passive absence. And absence is harder to grieve than pain. Pain validates itself. Pain is obvious. Pain gives you a clear "this is wrong." Absence is quiet. Absence makes you doubt your own perception. You wonder, am I exaggerating? Am I being unfair? Did I imagine it? This is why many undervalued siblings become experts in self-invalidation. You downplay your achievements. You brush off compliments. You laugh when you're hurt. You make your sadness smaller so no one feels uncomfortable. Compliments can even feel suspicious. Because your nervous system learned early that being seen didn't last. So it doesn't fully relax when attention finally comes. It's like your body says, don't trust it. It won't stay. And then there's the anger. Not explosive anger. Not the kind that slams doors. It's a dull, heavy, lingering anger, like something stuck inside the ribs. Not just anger at caregivers. Anger at yourself. Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I demand more? Why was I always the one to understand? But a child shouldn't have to demand care. A child shouldn't have to compete for emotional presence. And yet, many undervalued siblings grow up doing exactly that, quietly, invisibly. One common coping strategy is emotional outsourcing. The undervalued sibling becomes the listener, the supporter, the fixer, the emotional container for everyone else. You learn to hold space long before anyone holds space for you. You learn how to stay calm in chaos, how to speak softly when others explode, how to anticipate needs before they're said out loud. From the outside, it looks like maturity. From the inside, it's often survival. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional invisibility. Not neglect in the obvious sense, but subtle emotional unattendedness. It doesn't always create chaos. It creates self-erasure. You grow up believing that being low impact is a virtue, that needing less makes you easier to love, that independence equals maturity. But emotional independence formed too early isn't independence. It's adaptation. A child who stops asking for comfort isn't healed. They're adjusting. And here's where it starts shaping adulthood. Because the nervous system is drawn to familiar patterns, even painful ones. So without realizing it, many undervalued siblings recreate the emotional ecosystem they grew up in. Not because it felt good, but because it felt known. In friendships, you may become the one who gives more than you receive. In relationships, you may overfunction, fixing, managing, over-explaining. At work, you may become reliable but rarely celebrated. And you don't complain. Not because nothing hurts, but because disappointment feels worse than discomfort. There's usually a deep fear underneath all of this. If I ask for too much, I'll be seen as difficult. If I express hurt, I'll be misunderstood. If I step into visibility, I might be rejected. So you hover just below being seen. You stay close enough to belong, but far enough to stay safe. Psychologically, this links to how the brain learned to associate safety with emotional containment. When emotional expression didn't lead to connection in childhood, the brain stopped offering it freely. Not a flaw. Conditioning. And conditioning can be softened. One of the hardest shifts for the undervalued sibling is learning that self-sufficiency doesn't have to mean self-silencing. You might notice that when someone asks you, genuinely, what do you need, your mind goes blank. Not because you don't have needs, but because you were never asked often enough to practice answering. So you default to, I'm fine. Whatever works. It doesn't matter. Up to you. But it does matter. It always did. Another common experience is delayed anger. It often arrives later, when you start seeing how easily other people ask for help. How naturally they expect care. How confidently they assume their emotions are welcome. And part of you wonders, why was that never taught to me? The danger is turning that anger inward. Undervalued siblings often carry a harsh inner critic. You question your reactions. You doubt your feelings. You assume you're overthinking. But subtle emotional neglect leaves real marks. When connection was inconsistent, the nervous system becomes sensitive to rejection later in life. So when someone forgets you, deprioritizes you, or pulls away, it doesn't just hurt. It echoes. It brings back the old feeling. I'm not the one who matters. And then you do what you learned to do, you try to fix it. You replay conversations. You analyze tone. You over-explain. You take responsibility for emotional outcomes that were never yours to carry. This hyper-responsibility is learned. As a child, you may have believed harmony depended on you staying calm, agreeable, easy. That belief doesn't vanish with age. It just changes form. There's another layer people rarely talk about, identity confusion. When you grow up being defined in relation to siblings, rather than recognized for yourself, it can become difficult to answer a simple question. Who am I when no one needs me? Many undervalued siblings struggle with emptiness in quiet moments. Not because they lack depth, but because they were always oriented outward, scanning the room instead of checking in with themselves. And when life finally slows down, silence can feel uncomfortable. This is often when the reckoning begins. Usually in adulthood. Usually after giving too much for too long. Usually after realizing that being easy to deal with has cost you something. The cost is self-connection. You may feel grief for the version of you that never got to be loud, never got to be messy, never got to be prioritized without justification. And here's the truth that brings both pain and relief. You were not invisible because you lacked value. You were invisible because the system around you didn't know how to distribute attention fairly. Families are emotional ecosystems. They don't always reward depth. They reward immediacy, volume, crisis, performance. And those who don't create waves often go unseen. That doesn't make you lesser. It makes you adapted. So how does healing begin? For the undervalued sibling, healing doesn't start with confrontation. It starts with permission. Permission to take up space. Permission to feel without minimizing. Permission to stop being the one who always understands. It begins when you realize your quiet strength was never a requirement. It was a response. And responses can be rewritten. This starts small. It starts with noticing when you minimize your experience. When you dismiss your feelings before others can. When you assume your needs are inconvenient. And gently questioning that habit. You may need to practice sentences that feel unfamiliar. I actually do care about this. That didn't sit right with me. I need time. I need reassurance. I want to be included. These words might trigger guilt at first. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It means they're new. Boundaries are especially difficult for undervalued siblings. Because saying no can feel like abandonment. But boundaries aren't walls. They're clarity. They tell others how to treat you. But even more importantly, they tell you that your internal world is worth protecting. Another important shift is allowing yourself to be seen imperfectly. Many undervalued siblings try to stay composed, stable, helpful. Vulnerability feels risky. But being known requires exposure, not performance, not usefulness, presence. Not oversharing. Not forcing openness. Just letting safe people see you when you're unsure. When you don't have the answers. When you're not holding everything together. And then noticing who stays. One of the most healing realizations for the undervalued sibling is this. You don't need to become louder to be worthy. You don't need to compete to be chosen. You don't need to earn space by being exceptional. You already take up space simply by existing. The grief you carry isn't weakness. It's evidence of unmet attachment needs. And those needs were reasonable. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for presence. As you begin to recognize yourself, something shifts. You stop waiting for others to notice what you've always known. You stop shrinking preemptively. You stop assuming invisibility is your role. You may still be gentle, still thoughtful, still emotionally aware. But now those qualities belong to you, not to survival. And perhaps the most healing realization of all is this. Being overlooked did not define your value. It shaped your perception of it. And perceptions can change. You don't have to rewrite your story dramatically. You just have to stop erasing yourself from it. Because the sibling who grew up undervalued often carries something rare. Depth without entitlement. Strength without arrogance. Awareness without blindness. And when that depth is finally directed inward, when you learn to witness yourself with the same care you've given others, something settles. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But quietly. Like coming home to a part of yourself that was always there. Waiting to be seen.